What's up, everyone? Heading into week 7 of the college football season. Lauren Sisler with ESPN, Cole Kubik also with ESPN, SEC Network, and WJOX. He hangs out with Greg McElroy in the mornings. You can catch him from 7 to 10. This week we're talking Auburn, we're talking Ole Miss as we go head-to-head.
Oh, let's go now.
First of all, a shout out to the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Thank you for our sponsorship this season. And yeah, it's hard to believe we're at the halfway point of the season. Week 7, Auburn obviously took one to the chin against Georgia, 42-10. I don't know that the expectations were really outside of that parameter, but Auburn has got to find a way to improve, especially as they go on the road to Ole Miss in an early game, 11 o'clock kickoff. Right now, Auburn a 2-score underdog. And this is a much improved Ole Miss team, a team that's undefeated and obviously has a lot that they're working with on both sides of the football, much improved on both sides. And so I guess my first question for you, obviously Robbie Ashford seems to be the starting quarterback as things continue. I haven't heard otherwise at this point that TJ Finley is back, ready, and or will be playing. And so when you look at this offense going up against a defense that's much improved, from a standpoint of a team that's only giving up 14.5 points per game, how does Auburn figure this thing out? We talked last week, not much baseline, but there's got to be something that this Auburn team can do to catch some momentum and get some offensive points on the board.
If you're talking about sustaining drives in ways to maybe, be more consistent offensively, I've said it before, I think getting Robbie Ashford going north and south is going to be the best way to do that. You've got to find a way to design plays where he can make a quick decision and then utilize his straight line speed. It's one of the strengths of his game. Mm-hmm. Now, there is some film that's out on Ole Miss. You go back to the Tulsa game before they lost their quarterback. Last week, A.J. Swan, before he got a little bit dinged up, he and Mike Wright started to rotate a little bit. There are some things down the field that can be had, but you need accuracy from your quarterback, and Robbie hasn't really presented a lot of that. So for me, loosen up the defense, force them to defend an extra gap, utilize that quarterback mobility, and that can change the way the defense has to defend you and potentially open some other things up for this Auburn offense.
Yeah, and I think the big thing there, too, Robbie Ashford, obviously a young quarterback. I talked about this earlier in the season, how he handles himself. And I'd be curious to get your take on that from an emotional standpoint, because I think that's sometimes just as important, how a quarterback handles himself. Early on, the coaching staff said they really struggled with, TJ Finley kind of just lets things go, whereas Robbie would let it sit with him. He wouldn't be able to compartmentalize, and it would kind of sit with him the rest of practice. Obviously in game. How are you seeing him handle himself in these big situations, especially last week against Georgia, top team in the country? How are you seeing him, I guess, from an emotional standpoint?
It feels like it's getting a little bit better. I'm not there, I'm not in the huddle, so I don't hear it, and we don't see everything that's happening if you're not at the game or down on the sideline, but that's not one that I would really take a lot away from.
Yeah.
I think more times than not, games that you have opportunities in to either move the ball, score, be in, maybe a chance to win late, that's when, or things are going bad in a team you're supposed to be handling.
Right.
That's when sort of the body language, the attitude, the demeanor really becomes more important to me. Now, you still want a guy that goes out and gives good effort and wants to go out and win, communicates with his teammates, but it's not something I've seen be an issue for him. How much did it improve last week? I think it's tough for us to really tell just based on the way that game went.
And I do think that Auburn really has a chance to come in against an Ole Miss team and kind of right the ship a little bit and sort of get things back on track. And again, I think it's going to be momentum plays, momentum swings, but it's going to be tough against this Ole Miss offense. You got a guy like Jackson Dart who has continued to show improvement. He's still a developmental quarterback, and so I think that this Auburn defense can attack, maybe get some pressure on him, but there's some upside here. You got 2 new offensive coordinators, co-offensive coordinators for Ole Miss that are really doing kind of going back to the old philosophy of running the football. And this is a ground and pound kind of team. And so can this Auburn defense, put stress on them, force Jackson to throw the football, and obviously kind of get him out of rhythm and sort of make them one-dimensional?
If it's anything like it was last week, the answer to that is no. Because it may appear statistically that this is ground and pound and it's kind of old school football, but when you watch it and you dig deep, it's really not. It's really creative. It's very unique. I think it's one of the coolest run schemes in all of college football. They're going to give you a lot of misdirection. They'll run split zone with the tight end coming across. They'll bring jet motions with it. They'll do both of those. They'll cross them. They'll bring them together. They have certain plays that they'll block one thing, but the back will show a different thing. Like they'll run a zone scheme and the back will show counter motion and come back into the zone. They'll put a split zone or a jet motion with that. There's eye violations that can happen all over the field. You go back to last week against Georgia, split zone, running zone this way, tight end peeling across to steal that backside. Auburn couldn't locate it. Gap scheme runs, blocking back, pulling guys around. Auburn hadn't fit that all season, specifically against Penn State and last week against Georgia. You're getting all of that from Ole Miss and then some. And I think maybe the two most talented backs that Auburn has seen this year. It's going to be a handful. It will take, and then now you're adding tempo to it.
Yeah.
Penn State didn't do a lot of that. Georgia's not going to do a lot of that. So you're going to have to get your cleats in the ground right off the bat when that play's over and go get lined up. That adds another element. Jackson Dart has the ability to utilize his legs. They'll add some quarterback runs. Mingo had, 247 receiving last week, so they will push the ball down the field. I think even more so than Georgia last week, this will be Auburn's most difficult test defensively that they have seen this season.
Yeah, I think this is it's certainly going to be an interesting matchup. Again, I think Auburn's got to find some momentum, find some ways to move the football, sustain drives on offense, create some opportunities, some explosives, some turnovers, get things moving in favor in their direction and early, not waiting until obviously, they're kind of behind the sticks and having to deal with that. So with that being said, just looking at this matchup, I think there is some mismatch, obviously, that Auburn's going to have to contend with. What is your prediction for this game, and what does Auburn have to do really well if they want to have a chance?
Those turnovers that you mentioned, I think, have to happen. You have to force Ole Miss into mistakes somehow, some way, and then control the overall tempo of the game. I don't just mean Ole Miss going fast or slow or you going fast or slow. I mean, the pace of the game needs to be in favor of what you want to do and what you want it to be. So the style of game that Brian Harsin and his staff bring in, you must make it go that way. The style of this fight needs to cater to what you want. And I don't know exactly how they're drawing it up or what they're going to want to do, what they're going to want to be, but whatever it is, it's got to stay there. Because if it goes the way that Ole Miss wants it to go, and it's track meet, and it's warp speed, and it's up and down the field trading touchdowns, they'll take that all day, and they will win that game, and they'll probably win that game by 21, 24 points.
So what's your score?
I think 34-10 Ole Miss wins this game.
All right. I do think that Auburn is definitely going to have its hands full. I think the key point in that is the game plan. What kind of game plan does this coaching staff come in with? Obviously, Robbie Ashford's still trying to get comfortable. Can he maintain those emotions? What are they going to do, obviously, against this offense? Being able to contain, obviously, what you talked about, a lot of different looks, interesting philosophies. Do they have a game plan? I don't know. Remains to be seen. On the road, Ole Miss, I'm going to go 45-24. Ole Miss wins.
I feel like that prediction took a lot out of me.
Brought to you by Alabama Beef Farmers and Ranchers.